We are with Ian Mann this afternoon as he reviews a book called The Catalyst, How to Change Anyone's Mind. The author is Jonah Berger. We are, as always, delighted to have Ian as a regular contributor to talk to us live. Welcome, Ian.
Nice to be here.
Great. Ian is a well-respected strategist and leadership advisor, a seasoned entrepreneur, and yes, he doesn't just lecture on it, he's done it and does it. A prolific consumer of text and a sought-after book critic. So let's get into this book. It sounds a bit like a book about a genie. Interesting title, Ian. What is the book about?
Well, a need that all of us have, whether it's literally from the home to the office and almost everywhere else, we constantly need to change other people's minds. We need to change their minds so that they buy our goods. We need to change their minds so that they brush their teeth before they go to bed. We need to change their minds because we want them to vote differently. We've been trying to work out how to change people's minds, and most people that have haven't really thought about it deeply. If you want to change somebody's mind, what they would do is they would push harder. So I will tell you more facts, I'll explain more, I'll try and convince you, and that stuff just doesn't work. The harder you push, the less it seems to work. What he's done is, Berger is a professor of marketing. What he's come up with in his book, he says that the easiest way to change people's minds is to remove the barriers that stop them changing their mind in the first place. So if I can work out why people won't change their minds, I can remove the barriers and I'll have them change their minds. So that's what this book is about. And he's come up with 5 different ways of doing that.
Okay, geez, that's interesting. So let's unpack the 5 principles one by one, if we can.
The first one is called reactance. So let's look at that one first. He says human beings, whenever we're pushed, we push back. People almost have an innate anti-persuasion mechanism. It's shockproof and it's built in. And to lower the barriers, what we need to do is we need to encourage people to persuade themselves. Let me give you an example that he uses. There's a place called Arden House. It's a home for the aged. And a study was done there by some researchers from Yale and from Harvard in the 1970s. What they did was this. On one floor in this building, they reminded residents of how much freedom and how much control they actually have over their lives. They did it in the following way. They would say to them, what furniture would you like? You can choose which particular piece of furniture you'd like to have in your room, and one of the staff will come around and they'll help you arrange it. Then they'd come around with a box of plants and say, would you be interested in having plants in your room? Because if you'd like to, please pick out the plants that we've got available for you.
Okay.
We can be showing movies 2 nights a week, and you can pick which nights you'd like to go to and which movie you'd prefer. On every other floor, they did what they always did, was they gave exactly the same offers, except they said, this is the furniture you'll be getting. This is the plants that you can have. This is the movie you'll be going to, and this is the night you'll be going to that movie on. Very, very little control. When the group that they'd given more control to were reported to be more cheerful, more active, more alert. And worse still, or better still, the mortality rates was less than half of those who had no control at all. It appears that the feeling that you have more autonomy seemed to make people happier and make them live longer. Let me just give you a different example from a different context. I think will make it absolutely clear. Everywhere in the world, we've been trying to get people to stop smoking. Thailand was no different. They tried all sorts of things. Imagine yourself on the street, walking down, and you're a smoker, so you're having a cigarette. How many times has somebody walked by and said to you, hey, if you excuse me, can I have a light, please? And usually you take out your box of matches or light and you help them out. In this case, everybody who was asked, can I have a light, please? And they were asked politely, refused, they yelled back and they said, these people were smoking, right? They yelled at the person who asked and said, cigarettes contain poison. They'll drill a hole in your throat for cancer. And aren't you afraid of surgery? Smoking is going to make you die. The person who was asking for a light was a small boy wearing a monkey t-shirt, or a small girl. No, it's almost small. I mean, 1.2 meters. They're probably less than 10 years old. Or a girl with pigtails. And these children walked over to these people and took a cigarette out their pocket and said, "Excuse me, sir, can I have a light, please?" After they were yelled at by the smokers, before they walked away, they handed the smokers a small piece of paper, like folded over, the sort of thing that you pass around in classes when you're in standard 3.
Wrote a letter to my love type of thing.
It was folded over, and it said on it, "Why worry about me, but not about yourself?" And at the bottom, there was a toll-free number to quit smoking. That health promotion didn't cost the Health Promotion Foundation the millions of dollars the other adverts had cost. This cost them $5,000. $5,000.
Sure.
And almost everybody who received a note from a child paused and threw away their cigarettes. But no one threw away the brochure. And the helpline went up by 60%
That's
of those
amazing.
people getting those folders. So when you get somebody to persuade themselves, you're more likely to be successful. When you try to persuade them, then reactance happens and you just get pushed back. That was his first.
All right. What are the other 4?
Well, let's have a look at the next one. The next one's called endowment. When I've got something that I want, I'll give you a quick example. He says, he showed, there's a study that was done where people had a mug, just almost like a plain white mug that you might buy at Woolworths, I suppose. It costs probably about $3, whatever $3 would be. And when people were asked to sell the mug that they had, the sellers wanted almost twice as much to sell it as the mug cost to buy. Sellers wanted close to $7 when the mug actually cost around $3. It seems that people, when you've got something, it's more precious to you, which is what the experiment showed. It's more precious to you than when you have to buy it. People seem to be very attached to the status quo. It's my mug. I got it. I like it. Okay. So if you want to buy it, fine. Pay $7 for that. I'm not parting with it. We have a feeling if something isn't broken, don't fix it. Now, if you want to change somebody's mind, you're going to have to ease that feeling of endowment. You need a catalyst that can surface the cost of inaction, because very often we believe that if I do nothing, at least doing nothing costs me nothing.
Yes.
The point is that doing nothing usually does cost you something. He reports on about a woman who's involved in investments, and she had a client called Keith. And Keith was one of the people who invested. He saved his money all the time, and she's trying to explain to him that you're better off investing than saving. No, there's no change in his behavior. So she set up an imaginary clock on January 1st. And every time she would see him about other things like his insurances and so on, she'd always say, "Keith, do you realize that if you had only invested as opposed to savings, you wouldn't have lost so much money?" And he said, "What do you mean? I'm losing money. I opened my bank account. There's always more there this time than there was a little while back." He said, No, but there would have been even more if you had invested, not saved." And she kept, from the clock on January 1st, she kept monitoring how much money he was actually losing by doing nothing. When it got to over $2,000, he changed his mind. I think that what happens is people have a feeling that doing nothing is free. It isn't free. And even if doing nothing only costs you a little bit, many days or many months over many years costs you a lot. And when we want to get people to give up an endowment, something they're already endowed with, that's what I meant by endowment, what we've got to do is we've got to force them to do it somehow. One of the best examples of forcing, by the way, was Hernan Cortes, who was he was the man who, if you've heard anything about him, probably heard they burnt ships.
Yeah.
They invaded what's today Haiti and he's Mexico, excuse me, and he was sent there by the governor, and the governor was feeling out of control because now he'd gone, he conquered, and he's doing well, and he wanted to go further to Mexico. And the governor actually said, "No, I don't want to go any further." And he thought, "No, there's a lot more that we can make if we go a little further." And he wanted to go ahead, and he had to go ahead because if he didn't go ahead, the governor would have him arrested. So what he did was he told all his sailors to burn their boats. He instructed them to burn the ships. What that meant was they couldn't go back.
Okay.
And if they stayed where they would be in serious trouble. The only way was forward. Now, let's just use that as an example. You want to upgrade your systems, whether it's a computer system or any other. And the usual thing is people say, "Listen, give me a break. I'm barely coping with what I've got. Now you want to go and change things again." The only way you can get them to change is often by burning the ships. He said, as of Wednesday next week, there will no longer be any support for this version of Microsoft. And since there won't be any help after this, Monday, Tuesday, we're going to be running courses for you to get used to the new version. But there isn't any going back. That's the burning the ships. Sometimes we have to break the endowment only by burning ships.
It's like having a crutch. You need to throw it away sometimes.
Indeed.
Cool. So that's number 2. What are the other 3, Ian?
Number 3 is distance. Now, I think you just have to think about the American elections. When we are very, very far apart from each other, we can't talk to each other. I have a good friend. We were at school together. He was one of the smartest kids in the school. And I recall when he graduated, he became a surgeon and he studied at Guy's Hospital. So it's obviously really smart. Got there in the lucky packet. He's a Trump supporter. Now, I can't imagine any intelligent person being a Trump supporter. And he can't imagine why I could possibly not appreciate that this is a good man and that it's just Democrats who are giving him such bad press. And irrespective of what we talk about, we're so far apart. We've agreed we're not going to talk about this at all and rather preserve a very, very long friendship. So what do you do when you've got to change somebody's minds? And it's almost as if you're shouting at somebody from one side of a rugby field to the other side of the rugby field. The bottom line is forget about it. You're never ever going to persuade people that far apart. The best you can do is find people closer to the midline. And when people are closer to the midline, you at least can try things that'll make it easier for them to change. When the change is too far apart, it's really not worth it. Let me give you an example. There's a dietitian who had a client who was a very obese truck driver. And what he'd do every morning, he'd take 3 2-liter bottles of Mountain Dew and get into his truck, 3-liter bottles next to him and glug them all. Now, it doesn't sound like 3 liters of Mountain Dew. What the hell is that? But the fact is, gram for gram, that is like eating 100 of these, not Snicker bars, but Snicker bars. If you can imagine eating 100 Snicker bars, that's how much 3 2-liter Mountain Dews are really equivalent to. So if she said to him, "Look, you are obese and it's not going to go away if you continue drinking 3 bottles of the stuff every day." So as opposed to saying stop drinking, she said, "Look, always buy 2 bottles. And as soon as you finish 1 bottle, top it up with water. You can drink the water or the Mountain Dew, and just that way you've had 3 bottles of 6 liters of drink that day." After a while, she said, "Listen, try only buying 1 and then fill it up with water twice." And this happened slowly over a period of time. Then he went from 2 cans a day to 1 can a day, and then he says he hardly ever drinks the stuff and lost 11 kilos.
Oh, how amazing.
When you can cut things down like that, when you give somebody a challenge that's huge, Don't expect them to do it. Try and break it down. Try and make the distance between what they need and what they want a whole lot closer. It's much easier to make that transition than it is to ask people to make really big jumps. Big jumps they're not going to make.
And don't try and make those that are just too far away make any decision. Just leave them be.
Leave them be. There are instances, but they're very few and far between, and they're very hard to control. Much easier to worry about the middle. So if you're convincing people who've got very different ideas to you, forget about them. Just worry about people a little closer to you.
Okay.
His fourth one is all of us, whenever we have to try something new, feel uncertain. We feel uncertain because we're only certain about things we're certain about. If I've never tried this, never done this before, I'm always going to be uncertain. That's called perfectly natural. We have to get somebody to unpause that catalyst that stops them saying yes. We've got to alleviate uncertainty. And the only way we can do that, especially in a buying situation, is to make it easier for them to buy. Let me just explain a perfect example. When Boxdrop decided, you're familiar with Boxdrop, it's online storage. It was one of the very earliest ones. When it first started, nobody ever used online storage. We always had the backup disks. They had hard drives and backup disks, and even terabytes. But we didn't back up in the cloud. And Boxdrop said, "Listen, back up in the cloud. It's free. How do you build a business on something that's free? You can't make money out of something that you're giving away free." Well, what they did was they said, "You don't have to pay for it. Just use this stuff." If, of course, after a while you want more space, then it costs you. So it was incredible. I would never ever have looked at the Dropbox type of program unless it had been free. Once it's free, you get so used to using it, so it costs you something. But you say, "Look, I know how it works." If they said to me up front, "It's going to cost you $10 a month," or whatever it is, I would say, "Listen, I'm fine. I've been doing fine up to now. What do I need that for?" Once you try it free, it's an easy way to get into it. Another good example was a company that started off being called Shoe Site. When Amazon was selling books on Amazon, which is fine because whether I buy a book in exclusive books or anywhere else, it's the same book. So I didn't mind buying it if I wanted the book from Amazon. But if you said to me, "Would you buy shoes? Would you buy shoes from Amazon?" I said, "Not a chance. I want to try them on. I want to walk around, I want to look in the mirror, I want to see how they feel. I don't want to buy something from them." So what Zappos did, the shoe site eventually became Zappos. What Zappos did was they said, "There's free shipping and free return. We'll send it to you free. If you don't like it, the box is there and it's got prepaid return. So just send it back." That's all. Well, the range that they had was fantastic. So I could go and pick all sorts of shoes that I wouldn't have found in one store. Choose what I want. What I don't want, I can get back. Now, initially, they weren't making any money because it cost money to return the stuff, clean them, put them back in the box, fold them nicely again, and the cost of shipping. But the fact that Amazon bought them means that they were making a lot of money. And they made a lot of money because they made it very, very easy for you to overcome your feelings of uncertainty. One last example which you used as well. There's Winnie Acura, that's the very upmarket Honda product, came out. They were trying to compete the Audis and the Mercs and the Volvos, a premium brand. And it was very hard to get people who thought of Honda's nice, but it's not a premium brand. So why would you want to pay a premium price for a Honda? What they did was they lent free Acuras to the W Group. It's a chain of hotels. And the idea was that they would give you drivers and Acuras, and they said, "Listen, if any of your clientele, it's expensive hotels, so the sort of people who went there are the type of people who might buy a prestige car. Whenever they need transport, put them in our car, take them where they want to go. We'll take them where they want to go to the hotel." When they found that people had tried the cars, they said, "Hey, this is really nice." 80% of the people who drove in the car switched eventually from a premium brand to an Acura. So that when I overcome the uncertainty of buying as a premium, if I'd driven in it already and I enjoyed the ride, and I thought this was really nice, I'm more likely to buy it. So that's the uncertainty one. And he has just one left, and this will be the end of it. He talks about how if I want to change your mind, I need to have collaborating evidence. Now, collaborating evidence can't be more of the same. It must be different in different ways. For example, if I wanted to know whether I can, if I wanted to know whether to go and donate to a particular charity, and 6 people from the charity all told me why it was a good idea, that's not collaborating evidence. That's just one piece of evidence repeated 6 times over. But if a family member said to me, I like that charity, when you put money there, you know your money's going to be well used. Not only does a family member say, I hear it afterwards from a colleague at work, that's going to change my mind. So when we have collaborating evidence, we're more likely to buy in than if we don't. We also find that if there are people like me, really like me, who also use this, I'm more likely to do it. I'll just give you 2 quick examples, and with that I'll close. TripAdvisor allows you to look at comments other people have made about hotels that they've stayed at. When I'm looking in TripAdvisor, I suppose anybody who's ever used TripAdvisor would be the same. You tend not to look at for what other people think is the best hotel. I'm more interested in somebody who says, I love boutique hotels. I love boutique hotels to make you feel like you're really part of the suburb you're living in, as opposed to one of those fancy hotels which could be found anywhere in the world. You wake up in the morning, you have no idea whether you're in Singapore or New York. I like the small boutique places. And somebody says, and as boutique places go, this one was terrific. I'm likely to buy it. So when somebody like me advises that this was good, I'm more likely to take the advice seriously. Another common issue would be somebody says, listen, you've got a real problem, and your problem is that you're an addict. You're alcoholic, and you're going to try and do something about this. And when so many people have a feeling that if you're told to go and join the AA, you're going to go to the AA, and the people you're going to be mixing with are guys who sleep in the street. And that's not you. But if you went to an AA meeting, and when people introduced themselves to you, one was a judge who's practicing. He's on the bench now. Another one's a physician. You feel quite comfortable going there because people like me go to places like that. So we need collaborating evidence, all different sorts, for us to be able to make decisions and say yes. All these 5 different techniques, and they're very powerful because I've tried them all. They're very powerful and they work very well. And I can tell you that they work most of the time, with one exception. They don't seem to work terribly well on teenagers.
Nothing does. When you find out that news of what does work on teenagers, please let me know.
Yes. Yeah, but I think for the most part, for business and most of your life, you'll find it extraordinarily useful just to think about these 5 things. And the book reads beautifully.
They do sound very interesting. I think when I saw the title of the book, The Catalyst, I thought that was probably a book about the pandemic, because if ever there's been a catalyst, it's been the pandemic. I think it's forced us all into the online stores and to try things that we've never done before. And I find that quite enlightening, that we have the ability. We just sometimes, like you say, doing nothing is so much easier than actually making a change.
Indeed.
So Ian has a rating system for his book, and it's 3 areas. There's readability, 1 being light and 5 being serious. And this book scores a 3, so the readability seems quite structured. There's a section on insights, 1 being high and 5 being low. So this book scores 1, and given Ian's comments on the fact that he's used a lot of these insights, I can see why. And then just how practical the information is that's in the book. Again, 1 being high, 5 being low, this book scores a 1. So all in all, it sounds like a pretty good book to put into your bookshelf or get onto your Kindle. Would you agree, Ian?
Indeed, absolutely. I was trying to think who shouldn't read it or who would not benefit from it. I can't think of anyone.
Well, that's fantastic. And I think that's the whole idea about the book being practical, isn't it? It sort of like speaks to everybody in every walk of life. So, Ian, as per usual, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure speaking to you and listening to your book reviews. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Right. Thanks, Ian. And so if you found this useful, please hit the like button and subscribe, follow, share, and more importantly, talk to us. You can complete our booking consultation form on the contact page of the website if you'd like to speak to us. Ian's details are always below as well, and you're more than welcome to give him a call or drop him a mail. And please join us again tonight for our show called Lifeline with Charles, and he does our technology slot, and I'm sure that'll be quite an interesting